Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pucknology After Dark Writers Room Takeover after the Sharks beat the Vancouver Canucks by a 3-1 score. But being that they're the San Jose Sharks, even when they win, they find a way to lose. I don't know a better way to put it. Obviously, the win is going to be largely overshadowed by a injury to Joe Thornton. We don't know the extent of it yet. Obviously, we're probably not going to hear anything concise on it tonight, maybe not even tomorrow. But obviously it looked bad enough. And with a guy like Joe Thornton, I mean, he never goes down, it seems. So for him to leave the ice on one leg, I mean, that's kind of scary. Joe, what's your overall thoughts on this Joe Thornton situation? Since I think that big, it looms much bigger than the win over Vancouver, I think, at this point.
It's the worst thing that could happen. I really don't know how else to put it, but as Dan Ruzanowski pointed out tonight during the broadcast, this was Joe Thornton's fourth season as a Shark playing in 200 or more consecutive games, or fourth time, I should say, as a Shark. He's played in 200 or more consecutive games. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and list all the reasons why he's an essential part of the puzzle, but going into the playoffs, you need your top guys. You look at what happened to the Kings back in 2011 when they lost Andrei Kopitar. The Sharks beat them in 6 games pretty handedly because of that. So losing him for any amount of time, even, I mean, optimistically, getting him back before the playoffs would be great, but losing him even for one round of the playoffs is just, that's a devastating blow. And it just puts the Sharks into a further tailspin. So
I mean, I even with a healthy Joe Thornton in the first round, I wasn't feeling overly confident about their chances to begin with. But you take Joe Thornton out of the equation, and man, I don't want to be a downer, but I mean, realistically speaking, I don't. We keep asking, how can this season get any worse? Well, there's your answer.
Right. Silver lining, it is time for the Sharks as an organization to start asking themselves, what do we want from our younger guys, and what is this team going to look like in the next 2 to 3 years? As Marleau and Thornton, they're both at the end of their contracts, and it really is going to start becoming a more relevant question as we get further on to the playoffs, whether or not these two people are going to be part of this team going forward. And
right,
it really is, again, silver lining, it is an opportunity for the younger guys to shine. But I also, as much as as I complain about some of our lineup choices lately, I also think that like guys like Sorensen tonight had a really bad night. He is a -17 Corsi. Kevin LeBanc wasn't even that much better. And like these guys have potential, but I don't see them being the solution to the Sharks' problems for scoring like immediately, let alone for a playoff run. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Like I would love for Kevin LeBanc to go on another scoring tear, but it is really, really, really hard to think that the Sharks could equivocate or get equal playoff success from last year and carry that over into this year without Joe Thornton in the lineup. It's almost impossible to fathom. So
and you're already down Couture, which I
already forgot about that. And now that you just said that, I'm even more pissed off. So, oh my God. Yeah.
I know. Like, we don't know anything about Couture. I mean, hopefully we would see Couture back by the playoffs, but at this, geez. I'm scared. Like, who's playing center on what's the next game? Tuesday night at SAP versus Vancouver again? Like, is it like Marleau, Hurdle, and then Tierney,
Haley moving back to fourth line again?
Man, I've always thought that the Sharks had a strong down the middle, but it's a mess. Hey everybody, it is Mr. Zach Devine joining us. Zach, we're just talking about the Joe Thornton thing combined with now Logan Couture being out as well.
Yeah, I mean that's really going to be the ultimate test for the Sharks' depth. And as I was joining in, Ian, you were talking about the Sharks' depth down the center as an organization, and you look down, you've got Danny O'Regan that's probably in line for a call-up, or a Ryan Carpenter, but that's really going to be tested, especially with Tomas Hertl really being the only option left to get the center positions in any semblance of shape for the last couple games.
Yeah, I mean it's hard because you got, like I guess my question is are you gonna call up guys? Are you gonna try and just shuffle guys around? Does it even matter? Like I hate to say that, 'cause I mean obviously it matters, but I don't know what to do.
Well, I mean, you don't generate chemistry in 5 games, let alone the last 5 games of the season. And it's really, what's up, buddy? It's my favorite part of the show. Yeah, I mean, you don't generate chemistry in 5 games. And yeah, you can go on streaks, and, you look at like what's happening with Hansen and Bottker right now. They've been kind of playing off each other pretty well the last few games. But to sustain that going forward, especially in the playoffs when the atmosphere is just so much more different and competitive, is a really tall order. And I'm not sure that the Sharks right now are in a position where they could carry on without their top scoring guys, especially when they're already in the midst of a scoring slump. You're just furthering the problem.
Yeah, and the other fun part of all of this is you're still trying to get Brent Burns, back up to his operational capacity, and he's been the straw that stirs the Sharks' offensive drink all season.
Yeah.
So you've got Brent Burns, who has immensely cooled off. You have Logan Couture, who's your best forward on the team, and then you're losing out on your generational centerman who's been the linchpin of your organization for 11 years. Those aren't pieces that any team can easily absorb. And from there, it's really mitigation of damage as opposed to replacement.
Yeah, no, I mean, and like, has Brent Burns like completely torpedoed himself out of the Norris? Like, I think he's still going to get probably in the top 3, but at one point I would have said that Brent Burns for Norris was a given, and I am not sure anymore.
I think he is. I still think he's the front runner. And again, as Zach just mentioned, I mean, his scoring prowess for the first half of the season and up to about maybe 10 games ago was just insane. And I think that he really has been a really big boon for the Sharks' offense this season. And when he cools off, as you've noticed the last 10 games, the rest of the team cools off. And it really is a trickle-down effect of when we see our top scoring guy go into a slump, everyone else has to pick up the pieces. But when other guys are getting injured, other guys are, shuffling in and out of the lineup, it's really hard to kind of pick up the slack when you have so many moving pieces. And that's really what this team is right now. It's a team of moving pieces. And I don't know how those pieces are going to fall into a place, in a matchup against Edmonton or Calgary in the first round. It's really hard to kind of think about that and have hope. I know that sounds like really sad, but
I know I'm trying to like be upbeat and not just be a complete downer, but it's hard. I mean, the reality, man, reality. Zach, what do you think about the Burns Norris situation?
I think his runaway landslide has now turned into a vote, and I think with Karlsson's continued high level of play that's been, let's face it, more even-keeled than Burns. Burns had built up a massive cushion. And as it sits right now, you've got Burns at 73 points, Karlsson at 68, Hedman right below them at 67. Those are really, I think, your three. Those are the 3 realistic selections there. And I think, human nature, right? It's sample sizzle. So when Brent Burns has been ice cold for a dozen games leading into your year-end voting,
Yeah.
that's going to weigh into any voter's mind.
Yeah, no, and I think that, I think that with the Burns thing, I think that's part of it. It's going to be, this is a very much of what have you done for me lately league. And so for Burns to kind of sputter out now, like I think it hurts. I mean, should he be out of contention? No, absolutely not. But I don't think he runs away with it just because, recent memory is going to be a lot of what these guys go on, unfortunately.
Right. And remember, he was getting talk of Hart nominations.
Yeah, that's done.
Well, honestly, when Carey Price was out and Montreal just absolutely went straight to pot, I actually argued that, hey, Carey Price should win the MVP. Look what Montreal does without him. They're a lottery team. You might be able to make that same argument for Brent Burns. He's cooled off, and the entire Sharks have just sputtered to a stop. So, in my mind, it might even prove his Hart nomination. But, I know that's going to fall on deaf ears.
Connor McDavid guy that I think is going to run away with it.
Yeah, he's okay.
Yeah, he's okay.
He's all right.
He's all right. And then there's some other Sidney Crosby guy who's probably going to be in the mix. Like, it was, when Burns was hot, I thought for sure if he could have maintained how hot he was, for sure, I think that you could have made an argument for Brent Burns. But now, no, it's it's not even a thing anymore. And I don't think anyone who still thinks it's a thing is anywhere close, unfortunately. Let's get back to the game, because I know, like, ideally on the show, like, regardless of win or lose, I kind of did want to take a little bit of a deep dive on the Sharks and just kind of, what the hell happened to them. But we should probably talk about the game just a teeny wee bit. The Sharks won 3-1. Final goal was in the was an empty netter, so yay, I guess. That goal that Jones let in, though, oh my goodness, what was that?
I tweeted out that he went full on Niemi with that. I cannot think of a worse goal that Jones has given up as a goalie for the Sharks.
It's like,
bad.
It wasn't from
really
like
bad.
The other end of the ice or anything, but like I almost want to go like Vesatoskala bad.
Yeah,
without the distance.
I mean, on a replay, you can see that the puck kind of jumps up on him. So it was, I think Randy Hahn tonight called it a knuckle puck, which
Right.
I think makes sense. But it wasn't so much the initial save that bothered me. It was that he lost it in the crease.
Right.
If you look at the way he played that, he had no idea where it was when it bounced on him. He was looking behind him, and it was already in the net by the time he looked over his shoulder. So I think in that situation, if you know the puck is bouncing, you get low.
Yeah.
And you try to make sure that you either starfish out, you block the goal and cover the goal crease,
Right.
to prevent that from happening, or you get in your padding and then you just skate out and try to get as far away from it. I'm not a goaltender, but I have seen. I just knowing, but that's common sense. Just from knowing the game. Like, if you have a bouncing puck, you settle it. And in a game where you're trying to bust a 6 or 7 game skid against Vancouver with 5 games left in the season in the midst of the divisional race, like, you can write that off early October as getting like the yips or starting the season. But this late in the game, there's just no reason. There's no excuse. And again, silver lining, get it out now before the playoffs. But
yep.
Not Absolutely. A great way to end the game.
Zach, did you see this? Did you see this goal that Jones let in?
Yeah, and I tweeted out. Ian Fleming put together the save chart, which I've used extensively, really since it came out. And it breaks down goaltenders, where they're making their saves, how they stack up to their average competition, either in terms of age or versus other goaltenders. And historically, Martin Jones has had trouble with with medium danger shots. That's always been the piece of his game that has been a little softer. Conversely, his high danger shots have always been solid. Again, going back to his career. Right. This year, his medium danger shots are even below his already below average. And I think that's where you start seeing the concern. And I think that's what we are seeing, and the fans are talking about it and tweeting and saying all, in the various chat rooms, you're seeing goals like that where it's like, yeah, it was kind of a tough shot, but boy, an NHL goalie really should have, a better go of it. And
right.
That's one of those situations, that is got to get strengthened up, because that's going to be playoff hockey.
Right. It's funny, Sleepy Mofo, maybe with the comment in the chat on the night so far, it was our malice bad, and I can't disagree. Poor Mantis. Oh man. Thomas Hertl, 2 goals tonight. I thought Hertl looked really good. It was nice to kind of see Hertl get on the board. I'd like, it's hard because you don't want to take, and not just because I'm down about the whole Joe Thornton thing, but this is a really bad Vancouver team. So I don't know how much optimism I take from the game. Am I wrong here? Am I just crapping on a win? What do you guys think?
No, I think tonight that the Sharks played a really good first period, like a first 10 minutes, 11 minutes, and then a pretty solid second period. And then by the time they came out from the third period, the wheels came off a little bit, and that kind of led to the Jones goal. And if you look at the possession numbers for the game tonight, Vancouver actually outpossessed the Sharks for the majority of the game after like the first 15 minutes, which, as you said, this is a really bad Vancouver team.
Right.
So to have that happen, I mean, I know, again, we're playing without Jumbo for most of the game, but I think right now the Sharks are sending a message to the rest of the league that if we give you an inch, feel free to take 5 miles. And it's just not the MO that you want to be laying out before you head into the playoffs. So I really do hope that going forward, the Sharks can kind of reevaluate where they're at and just kind of refocus their game plan and get back to playing Sharks hockey.
Yeah, I mean, these next 3 games are going to really be telling, I think, as to what this team is going forward, depending on who's in the lineup, of course, too. Obviously, Couture didn't go on the road trip, so it'll be interesting to see what his status is come Tuesday. I don't know. I mean, I didn't like the way that they played a lot of the game. I thought that, if I'm supposed to, I always will like the 2 points, but at this point, man, it was a victory on paper, but I don't think it was like a more, you know what I mean? It wasn't much to build off of there, I don't think. If that makes any sense. Zach, what do you think?
I think a win is a win, and what's going on with the Sharks, they've obviously got a bit of skill,
Yeah, they got a few guys.
There's no reason this team should be playing at this level. And so, in my mind, what's going on is between the ears is confidence. And kind of in that same vein, that's a scary place to be when you're counting on Tomas Hertl, who's probably the most reliant on that. He's got to feel good physically, mentally to be effective. And so when you've already got a team that's struggling for that confidence, for that with that mental edge, to be reliant now on Tomas Hertl being elevated into your top 6, that's a scary place to be. And going into this, before Joe Thornton's knee bent the wrong way, I wasn't too scared of Edmonton or Calgary, to be honest. Their teams are so reliant on the top line. So that's the kind of scoring that goes away in the playoffs. And I felt that the Sharks could handle that in a series. Maybe not game to game. But now with Logan Couture of questionable efficacy going forward, Joe Thornton, Sharks fans are going to wait with, bated breath on updates for him. That it definitely is a hit to the playoff hopes, which it goes without saying. But already they were shaky, and I think now it's full on concern.
It's bad because like I'm just gonna show this picture that I have on Twitter that I retweeted earlier, just so everyone and in case anyone missed it, this is courtesy of Sergi at Dasguch on the Twitters, and you can just see if you look at Thornton's knee. Right there, that your knee's not supposed to bend that way, guys. I don't know how. Like, I don't want to. I'm not a doctor. Let's start by getting that out of the way. Not a doctor at all, but
oh my god,
I don't. This. I mean, this could be, depending on how things play out. Is that the last time we see Joe Thornton in PL?
Curtis Pashelka just tweeted out that Joe Thornton left Rogers Arena under his own power, didn't need crutches or anything, but obviously a noticeable limp.
Well, that's positive then.
We just read that at the exact same time, and as I was reading it, you were saying all the words. That was really weird.
All right. Well, there you go. Maybe crisis averted, but oof, man. I mean, when I saw that scared me.
I mean, even if it isn't a tear, it can still be a sprain. And
right.
I mean, you look at what happened when Hurdle came back from his injury. Like you're not playing at 100%. No. So especially when you're a guy, in upper middle 30s like Jumbo Joe Thornton, those injuries sit with you. So it's really not something that you can just get a surgery for overnight and hope to fix. So. Okay. Again, yeah. I mean, the fact that he's walking though without a crutch is good, but we also don't know if he's just doing that to.
So I should dial it back, is what you're saying? Maybe dial back the last game in PL.
The other thing that you have to take into consideration is the playoffs right around the corner. Jumbo, think about if I'm the Sharks, do I want Jumbo Joe Thornton leaving a regular season game with 5 regular season games left in crutches? No. Do I want to show that to the rest of the league? Heading into the playoffs? No. So. I mean, I think we'll wait for an evaluation. I mean, it's really impossible to speculate, especially with knee injuries. Those things are like a roulette table of
right. Yeah, I mean, we're going to need to see that. They're going to need to do an MRI or something, and then I guess we can panic on the "Have we seen Joe Thornton for the last time?" question. So I'll shelf that for now.
And even if he can skate, let's be brutally honest here. Joe Thornton doesn't have a step to lose. He's already lost.
No.
And so you put Joe Thornton on one leg when he's relying on his, elite vision, his excellent reach, to help with the step he's lost. That gets really hard to hide because he needs every bit of skating that he's got.
Well, if he scores 4 goals in one game, he can use his third leg. So.
Oh, jeez. No. In the chat, what's up with Logan? Logan took a big burn slap shot and lost some teeth and hasn't played since. Man.
It's scary.
Wow, sorry, I'm just reading the chat here. Yeah, it is scary.
I mean, this is any team losing one of their top 2 centers is irreplaceable. Losing both.
Yeah. It's bad. Let's see what it is. I mean, hopefully it's something that hopefully it's not nearly as bad as we think it is, but even if it's, something he can play through, like Zach said, I think it can't be misunderstood that that's still not good enough for Joe Thornton at his age and at this point in the game. Call up Tim Clifton. Yeah,
speaking of scoring woes, Patrick Eaves just scored his 9th power play goal with the Ducks this year.
Wow.
That's his 30th of the year. This was a guy the Sharks could have made a play for.
Yeah, somebody put a really good article on Pucknology about that, didn't they, Ian?
Yeah, they did. The thing with Eaves was the thing that made me nervous with Patrick Eaves was that, was the talent he was surrounded by in Dallas, and I wasn't sure how that would translate over to being in Anaheim, like depending which line they put him on. Because other than this year, I mean, it's not a whole lot of happy scoring there. So
right, but the Sharks' perpetual search for a left winger.
I know.
On those lines, really the first and third. I think Marleau and Couture have been solid, but now Marleau has to be a center. So
Right.
You know, Eves could have been a top 6 winger.
Why not? See, I'm surprised that with Thornton not there, why don't you move Pavelski to center on that line? Like Marleau to me has been far more effective on the wing this year than ever than any of the sightings we've seen at center. So to me, it makes more sense that we should move Pavelski to center and let Marleau stay on the wing.
Yeah.
That's a more natural. That seems more natural to me, especially because you have Pavelski with his. Yeah, I mean, he's probably the best man in front of the net in the NHL right now.
Yeah,
that's another reason why. I feel like this argument gets made every year of whether or not to move Pavelski to center, and I think that the reasons are more justifiable this year, just because of all the injuries that just hit us. But I just don't know if DeBoer will consider moving him off that top line. I don't know.
Oh, no. AJ Strong with the new top line of 48, 8, and 88. The crazy 8s line. Go home, AJ. Go home.
AJ. You're drunk.
No, I mean, oh, gosh. I guess the silver lining here, and there's not much of a silver lining, but I think we're gonna really see what we have in some of these players. Look, this team has been reliant on Joe Thornton and Brent Burns to a more extent as of late, but really, I mean, the offense has always gone through Joe Thornton throughout his time here, and Joe Thornton not getting much younger. I don't know. This is kind of an opportunity to see what you got at this point, right?
No,
No,
not with 5 games to go, with a team that the window for the Stanley Cup is cracked at best. This is not the time to see what you have in anybody. This is.
But if you don't have a choice in the matter.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the great. I mean, the decision is very easy when you have no choices left.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's fair.
And that's where the Sharks find themselves. You've got only a few options, right? And you have no other option. So,
I mean, to me, if I'm going down the middle right now, I'm going Pavelski, I'm going Hurdle out of necessity, Tierney, and then you can jump ball for that 4th spot. I mean, knowing Peter DeBoer, he probably goes Michael Haley, whatever. But I mean, you could also put Carpenter, you could put O'Regan there, and that's the crappy thing for me. I understand, I understand how the game works. The AHL team is there to support the NHL team, and it's not vice versa. But man, losing O'Regan on top of all the other players they've already called up, my silver lining of a deep Barracuda run just gets a little kicked around. I don't know. What do they do? Zach, what do you think they should do?
I think it's a call up of O'Regan if you're looking for some kind of offensive replacement at some point. Danny O'Regan might be a top 6 center in the future, but he does have the offensive chops to step in a bottom 6 role currently, right? Because you're gonna solve the top 6 from the current roster, right. And he can add some spark there. And to be honest, he's played quite a bit with Kevin LeBanc and Timo Meier. Why not have a kids line?
Oh, I agree.
They're familiar. They're all, high skill. They're very complimentary. If you look at the skill sets.
But at the same time, not to get all numerical, but I just don't think the possession numbers for all 3 of the players you just mentioned could warrant them holding their own on the line together. I think that they both are all 3 of those players that you just mentioned are really good at slotting in on the bottom 6 and taking out a role and playing with maybe more experienced players. But having a kids line, especially in the playoffs, I just don't know if they could handle their own, especially when puck possession is so important in the postseason and is such an elemental key for victory.
If it's not them, it's Haley. So
believe me, you know me.
I know.
Ian,
I know.
You know me.
I know.
I would want nothing more. But at least with Haley, you can surround him and kind of mask the anchor that weighs down the fourth line with other guys. But having three guys, I just think it's too much of a liability. I don't know.
I think you're I don't know. To me, the bottom six at that point is so gutted. It doesn't like there's no sheltering. There's no one to shelter anybody left.
Right.
Unless if you're gonna like, I mean, do you put Joel Ward down there?
I was about to say throw Ward down there and just try and mix some stuff up. I mean, like if you're gonna
positive possession.
did
I wait? Where am I?
That's fair. No, I mean it's just
Ward tonight did have. I'm looking right now. Ward had a. He was even on Corsi. He was dead even. So, and he played 15 minutes. So,
I mean, so before all this, because I think what I really wanted to do on the show tonight was just really like, where did everything go wrong? And then of course this happens, and well, I mean that just makes the question seem all just kind of silly here. But I'm just looking at like the. A lot of the announcers, were like, oh, well, they got it in March, thank God. And I'm thinking like, yeah, but February wasn't really good either. Like this, it's not like this March. I mean, March was a disaster. Don't get me wrong. But I'm looking at these February numbers. The Sharks played 10 games in February. They were 4-1-5. They only earned 13 points in February. And then they come to this month, March, which was arguably bad as well. You went 15 games, you went 6-9. Like this team has been in free fall for a lot longer than March. And to me, I can't wrap my head around it because you had a team that had this 9-point lead, and they squandered it away. Well, we saw how they squandered it away, it doesn't make any sense to me because it's not like these injuries are the cause of the current demise. The Sharks were bad before Couture got hit in the face. They were bad before whatever happened to Thornton's knee. And I don't what are your thoughts on how the hell we got here from where we were in, let's say, January? Zach, I'll start with you.
Confidence is a fickle thing and it comes and goes. And I see it as a team that maybe started to believe its own legend a little bit, maybe got a little too comfortable, and just it's like anyone that's had a vehicle for 10, 12 years. It starts running rough well before all of a sudden you're leaving 3 of your 6 pistons in the road behind you. So it's coming. And you started to see the pieces. Jones this year has had really good looks, but his consistency level has not helped my confidence.
No.
He's been solid, not exceptional. And you need your goalie to steal games. I hate to always go back to this, but Troy Grosnick has just flat out stolen games for the San Jose Barracuda. And at any level of hockey, you need a goaltender that when your team isn't at its best, he or she is. And I think that the Sharks haven't been getting that out of Martin Jones, where it might have averted, the plane crashing into the mountain.
I feel like they got it early in the season, but not as the season went on. Like, I think for me, I think a part of the Sharks' struggles all year, I mean, secondary scoring's been crap, right? And I feel sorry, go ahead.
No, exactly. And that's a theme that I've, kind of the joke that I'm running with right now is that my secondary scoring drum is broken. And so I'm harping on other things now because even I'm sick of tweeting that. I completely agree. And Brent Burns masked that secondary scoring. He was the secondary scorer, right? When you have a defenseman putting up those types of numbers, you can get away with your second and third lines, wandering in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Now that the Wookiee has joined them in the wilderness, here we are.
Yeah, no, that's true. And just to put things into perspective there on Brent Burns, led the team in point scoring in the month of February, with 12 points, 6 goals and 6 assists in 10 games. In March, he had 1 goal, 6 assists for 7 points, and was a -10. Not that I know plus minus is a crappy stat, but I think in a smaller sample size, it's okay. It has its uses. Joe, where are you at with this team? Where did the tailspin start? What starts it for you?
I think I am, forgive me, I do not remember who tweeted it out, but I was reading yesterday that the Sharks, I believe it was their 5-13-8 against playoff teams since January. And I think that's it. I think that I don't know how else to really kind of add it up. So, I mean, like, now you could look at that and be like, the Sharks have gotten points in, 13 out of 26 games against playoff teams. So that's the best way you can spin it. But it's not acceptable for a team to get that close and then let the foot off the gas. And it's not fair to the fans. It's not fair to themselves. It's not fair to the organization. It's not fair to the individual players. I mean, if I'm one of the younger guys on that team and I see a guy like Thornton or Couture get hurt, I shouldn't be thinking I have to bear this burden. I should be thinking I'm going to do this because this is what I want to do, and I owe this to this team for giving me this opportunity. And I feel like there is, like you said, this kind of this backlogged mental thing for the Sharks, where like when they get into slumps like this, the guys really become individuals and they really start blaming themselves, and the media plays into that. They single out guys like Marlowe, they single out guys like Thornton, they single out guys for not having enough heart and carrying. It's like, it's not what this team lives and dies on. It's what Zach said. It's the secondary. This team has lived and died in secondary scoring, secondary power play units for years. And it hasn't been all Jumbo Joe. It's come down to guys like Danny Heatley going cold. It's come down to guys like Teemu Solani going cold in the playoffs and missing wraparounds against Colorado. I still bear that. That still haunts me. Like, it's not. So when you ask me like where it went wrong, I don't know if there's one specific game you can point out. Maybe you can look at it, the last time the Sharks, I think, had a sound victory against a playoff team was when they beat Washington 4-2 right before this whole slump started.
Right.
Because
that's where it all went down. Like, after that, everything just went to hell in a handbasket, and I just can't explain it.
I don't know if, if maybe they were like, well, we beat the probable Eastern Conference championship team, we're good. I don't know if that was what happened, but I mean, you look at the games they started dropping. I mean, Nashville, I understand. Dallas?
No excuse.
No. I don't care if it's a back-to-back.
Yeah.
You don't drop, and they did twice against Dallas. Like, come on, man. And with goal margins of 4 goals in each game?
Well, that goes back to the whole goaltending thing, right? Like, sometimes you need the goalie to make a save. I mean, I'm not, I don't want to say, like, I don't want this to come off as like, well, Martin Jones season over. Like, no, I'm not pinning this on Jones, but I don't think Jones deserves to get, out unscathed either.
Right. And the other elephant in the room is the down year of Vlasic and Braun, especially lately. And you look at where their numbers are this season compared to what they've done over the course of their career. If you're a shutdown defender, you're not, posting a 47% Corsi for. That's right. Just not going to cut it. And I understand defensive zone starts and all that. You have Marc-Edouard Vlasic take a 5% drop in even strength Corsi. That's huge. Yeah. Because he's the one going up against, the other team's top lines.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think Vlasic's hurt. Like, that's the only explanation that I have for how badly he's dropped off, because it's either that or like it's a Mission Impossible mask and it's just not actually Vlasic. That's it. Those are your two options.
I don't know if it's age or if it is maybe something got triggered, but I think it's a combination of his play slumping, but then also just going back for a second to what you're saying about Burns kind of, being like the secondary scoring. I don't know if it's so much of Burns having a slump as it is the other 29 teams in the NHL watching the Sharks' offensive zone entry and seeing that, DeBoer had this one play where, we get the puck deep, we cycle low, we pass out to Burns at the point, slap shot, goal. And I feel like that play worked for so long.
Oh, it did.
And now I think teams are realizing if they collapse in front, if they can collapse four guys in the front, in front of their own net, they can block that shot. And if they send one guy up to contest the shot, they can potentially, it can go off a shin, and then that leads to a break. That's why we've had so many shorthanded breakaways.
Right. No, it makes sense. Yeah. And also too, I mean, and if they don't block the shot, then Logan Couture's face will.
Yeah. Well,
I know. I'm sorry. That's not funny. I'm glad you brought up Peter DeBoer, though, because, obviously something that's obviously been getting a lot of play as well. Of course, this is happening. Peter DeBoer is terrible in his second year of coaching. And it's something that it vexes me a little bit, because I'm like, well, that's really dumb, because, I look back at New Jersey and I'm like, well, you lose Kovalchuk, you lose Parise, you have basically bits and pieces of an NHL team left, and you expect it to do something. But I mean, but again, Peter DeBoer is a guy who can't be without blame here. You want to talk about the power play? The power play is a perfect example of, it's like you said, people have picked up, if you get in the lane, then Brent Burns can't, blow it past your goalie. Some of the lineup decisions, now I'm not a NHL coach, I've never coached a game in my life, so take this with the grain of salt that you will, but some of the lineup decisions, at least to me, are puzzling. And the power play, I mean, how do you not just the lack of, some of the lineup decisions are puzzling, and then some of the lack of other lineup decisions in other places are even more puzzling. How does the first power play unit stay together through all of this? I don't know. Zach, do you have any thoughts on Peter DeBoer's coaching this year?
There's certain players that their role on the team does not allow movement. You can't go to Jumbo Thornton,
right,
and say, you know what, we're just not on the power play, not tonight. You just can't do that.
No, I get it, but the fact that nothing really around him changed, like that's where I have the problem. Like, I get that some guys have roles.
So do you go to Logan Couture, who, or Joe Pavelski or Brent Burns? I mean, these are all players that are in contention for the Mount Rushmore of San Jose Sharks hockey. Sure. And part of me, to kind of go off the rails here a little bit, I like that DeBoer has gone to these guys and said, you are the leaders of this team, and you need to figure this out. I can't go out there and skate. Breaking news, Peter DeBoer is not going to join the first power play unit. The guys on the ice have to get it done. And to Joe's point, you're right. The Sharks' bread and butter has been get Jumbo down low, get it back up high to either Pavelski or Burns. Pavelski gets the tip. Burns, wires home a wrister. Teams have had video on that for years, and it's been so good, nobody can stop it. Mm-hmm. For me, it comes back to confidence, because Pete DeBoer has to put out, his most talented line. And his most talented lineup. And I know Michael Haley might be the most written about fourth liner in NHL history. Just after this season, more ink and tweets and friendship and marriages destroyed than maybe any fourth line winger ever. I hear
John Scott.
Yeah, but people knew. People knew. I mean, Michael Haley is it's polarizing, but really, what if you're worried about what Michael Haley is doing with his 9 minutes, if that's the biggest axe to grind, really what's left? Right, you're giving a free pass to everybody else.
I agree with that for 110%.
He is your 12th winger. He is 12th on that depth chart. If you were to rank your skaters 1 to 12, every lineup that Michael Haley is in, he is number 12. The other 11 guys ahead of him, that's who's carrying the water.
Well, I think people's concern isn't with what Haley's doing. It's what other people could be doing in Haley's place. I think it's, when we do have guys in the pipeline like Meyer, like LeBanc, it really has been a little grating to watch DeBoer put Haley back in the lineup. But to go back to your point about the power play, I'm going to call this right now. I do not think that Steve Spott will be back as a Sharks assistant coach next season. I would be very surprised, given that he is in charge of the power play for the Sharks, and given that it's been horrible this whole year. It hasn't gotten any better. And to see this coaching staff's kind of awkward refusal to not even try to inject any sort of new players or ideas into it has been, I think, if we are headed towards an early playoff exit, will be the foundation of the reason why. I don't understand how you can justify icing that same line over and over expecting a result. And I understand you have to give guys like Jumbo their due. I understand you have to let Burns get out of a scoring slump. But to go back to the Haley thing, it's, why are we holding on to the notion that we have to let these players prove themselves and solve it themselves when we have other people in the lineup that they could potentially play off of and do something with? I would kill to see. It would be awesome to see, you want to talk about pairing up like a kid's line. I was kind of worried about that, but you throw LeBanc on the top unit, throw O'Regan on the top unit. You got 5 games left. We already have a playoff spot clinched. See if you can get some chemistry going into the playoffs. I see nothing wrong with that, because as it stands right now, no matter what happens, we are in the playoffs. Use these next 5 games to, I pray to God, get something going. 3. Thank you.
3 games.
And, here we are adding to the legend of Michael Haley. I would rather Michael Haley get 9 minutes than have Kevin LeBanc, Timo Meyer, insert young developing player here, get 9 minutes. You look at the top players in the CHL and the AHL at any level of hockey, your big horses are getting 24, 26 minutes a night on defense. Your top forwards are in that 16 to 20 range. Joakim Ryan, I don't think he's had a game under 25 minutes this year for the Barracuda. He's developing whether he likes it or not. He's getting so much ice time. You're learning. It doesn't matter. 25 minutes a night, you figured something else out. Some other little piece just clicked for you. And I see where you're going, Joe. And actually, now that Joe mentions it, I could completely see the assistant coach, carousel spin there, because you're right. I stick by my point that there's, when these 5 players command 45, 50% of your salary cap, it's pretty hard to deviate there. What is concerning is that there has been no changes to the recipe.
Right. And that's been my gripe.
Right. I would love the Sharks to go to a really regimented 1-3-1. They play kind of a hybrid of it right now, but I would like to just see Burns at the point, leave him alone up there. He's got the skating, he's got the reach. Go 3 wide, Pavelski, across the middle. Thornton loves the sideboards. Just embrace it. Go full 1-3-1. Put Pavelski in front for the tips. Marleau's still got wheels. Get him in that puck retrieval. There's things that you can do. There's coaching that you can do to use the strengths and what the players that like to do. Let them do it. Put them in a position to succeed, as opposed to, we have this system. That's the end of it. And remember, the Sharks system, it's taught all the way down.
That's right.
So what you've got to, and I'm not a huge fan of that. I understand kind of overarching system principles, but you watch a Barracuda game, it looks identical to a San Jose Sharks game, and vice versa.
Yeah.
You know exactly what Barclay Goodrow is going to do on a breakout, because that's exactly what Joel Ward does on a breakout.
It's there's some really, I mean, there's been a lot of really good points here in the last little bit. Like for one, I've said this many times. I am at the point of Haley acceptance. I just kind of accept he's going to be there. Do I think that they can do different things? Sure, but I also see the same thing with Zach. Look, this Barracuda team is really good this year. And, having a guy like LeBanc or Meyer or, all these developing guys playing top line minutes going into the AHL playoffs. I mean, there's valuable development there too. I mean, obviously the goal is to make the NHL team win, and I completely understand that. But at the same time, like, I get like the dislike of Michael Haley, but it's so overblown. It's gone too far. It goes back to what Zach said. Like, you can whine and complain about Michael Haley all you want, but at the end of the day, look at here's some point totals for March. Patrick Marleau, 4 goals, 5 assists. Brent Burns, 7 points. Yannick Hansen finally came on. Bodker, 4 points. These guys you're counting on to get points. Hansen was playing, on the top line. Pavelski, 11, but like, they're not, what I mean? But there's not enough there to get, in 15 games, you need more production from everybody. And to just throw this on Michael Haley, which happens way too often, it's a huge disservice to the rest of the team that you're letting off, because Michael Haley's job is to create energy on the fourth line. It's not to score goals. He's not expected to be our leading scorer. No one playing in that position is expected to be leading the charge. If you're Chris Tierney with 3 points, you're not good enough. If you're a Melker Karlsson with 3 points, that's not good enough. If you're a Joel Ward with 3 points in March, that's not good enough.
Donskoy's been
Donskoy, God, man, Donskoy kills me. 0 points, -6, like, killing me, absolutely killing me, because you guys know how much that, I love Donskoy. But if, Timo Meier played 5 games, and nothing to show for it. Or sorry, he had an assist, my bad. Kevin LeBanc played in 3, nothing. Like, Michael Haley being in the lineup isn't causing that.
Right. And just on, trying to put a bow on this, when we were talking about Michael Haley and his, 9 minutes of ice time, that's not hyperbole. He averages 9 minutes and 9 seconds of ice time. Every single San Jose Shark that's played even a single game has averaged more ice time than Michael Haley all year long.
And the only argument that, like, I do want, before we completely, like, I understand that if you maybe put a different player there, because Michael Haley plays 9 minutes, that you could roll, more, especially if you're, a lot of people are going to point to fatigue for a lot of the veterans. If you could have rolled, a more even distribution, or not even per se, but if you could roll more minutes on that fourth line, then maybe things get better. But again, I just think, like, I get it, but at the same time, I feel like this is like, it's just a huge red herring at this point. Like, there's bigger problems with this team, and wasting ink on Michael Haley's just a waste of time. But that's just me.
Wasting time on Michael Haley is a waste of time. Let me make this, follow this analogy for a second. Let's imagine you own a bakery, and somebody orders 12 cakes. They give them back to you. They say, 11 of these cakes are cold. I wanted a warm cake. And one of these cakes is just a box of poop.
What kind of bakery do you go to, Joe?
Exactly. Now to tell someone, well, I mean, it's, all these cakes have something wrong, I guess. No, the person reaction is not going to be, well, you're right. It's going to be, why did you give me a piece of poop? Why did you give me the 11 cakes that are stale and one piece of poop? So for me with Michael Haley, his being in the lineup doesn't offer me any possible solution to what you guys are talking about. And I understand that there are multiple things that are going wrong with the Sharks right now.
For sure.
As Dan Rosanowski has been saying, the wheels have been off the cart for like the last 6 games. But to put a guy in a lineup whose sole job is to drop the gloves, which the Sharks are 7-8-1 in games where Michael Haley has dropped the gloves, the guy who's supposed to provide the spark for the Sharks to come back from games when they're down. They have a losing record when he does that. For a guy who, again, the Sharks have a losing lineup in all the games that he's played in. The Sharks have a better record when he isn't in the lineup. The only other game that the Sharks won during this slump, Michael Haley was not in the lineup.
To me though, it's like, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. The media has a tendency to pin all the blame on one player. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to say it's all Michael Haley's fault, because you're right. Michael Haley sucker punching a guy in a Nashville game doesn't change the fact that Burns only had 8 points last month. It doesn't change that fact at all. But if we're looking for ways to move forward from that, and we're trying to find ways to make this team more offensively productive, it's hard to justify putting a guy whose sole purpose is to punch people in the lineup. But I think like when it comes to Haley though, in Haley's defense, I don't think that's his sole purpose. Like, he's not Mike Brown, he's not John Scott. I'm not saying he's but I think he's less. At least he has some. how do I say this? That's not his whole game.
Pete DeBoer said in the media that his presence is to patrol the ice.
Oh, for sure, because that's what
that's all DeBoer. But that's what DeBoer wants him to do. I feel like that's his MO. So yeah, if he chips in offensively, it's fun to write about, and that justifies him being in the lineup once he gets a point or two. But I don't think that outweighs all the drawbacks. It's really frustrating to see a team that's so close and on the cusp be held back by the little things. It's the secondary things that add up, like we were talking about earlier.
Sure.
Haley is one of the secondary things.
Haley's not a secondary thing. The Sharks right now, if this was a company, you have your CEO who refuses to make changes to your product line. You have a sales team who's out there, maybe not even. Maybe they're all on vacation in Hawaii. You have an engineering team that can't figure out all this, and we're blaming the janitor because one of the garbage cans wasn't emptied last night.
No, I'm blaming the janitor for sucker punching the IT guy. That's why he just suspended him for a week.
He didn't sucker punch our IT guy. He sucker punched the competition's IT guy, and it wasn't a sucker punch. So let's get that one straight. The wheels are off this cart, and I mean Michael Haley is the bumper sticker on said cart. I mean at best, he skates better than Joel Ward. He's a middleweight. To classify him as a goon, as someone that was a goon, is insulting. He's a middleweight. In his league, he's a middleweight. I can't even think of a true goon that's even left in the NHL. You have a bunch of middleweights and a bunch of dirty players running around. That's about it.
Oh no, I'm thinking, who is heavyweights left?
And I would not say that we have a CEO that doesn't know how to scout/recruit talent. Doug Wilson is getting, I have some concerns on the, how can we put this delicately, on the talent assessment of draft eligible age players. But the Sharks have also proven to be able to pluck undrafted free agents, Euros, with alarming frequency that contribute at multiple levels in the organization. And that's the hard part.
No one.
Yes,
foresaw,
AJ. I have not seen any drafts on defense. I have not. I paid no attention to any of the drafts.
We've never drafted a defenseman.
Never. No. Oh God, here we go. I mean,
let's start breaking down the 27 draft picks. Because the Sharks, they're going to keep them first round. So for one of my editors, Peter Harling over at DauberProspects.com, did a mock draft, and I have the Sharks taking Robin Salo out of Vassen Sport, skilled left-handed defenseman, 6 foot, about 180 pounds, needs to beef up. Thoughts, Ian?
Yay!
Excellent. See, I make all the right choices.
I mean, can we let go of Nick Petrecki?
Really? Is that in the chat?
No, but I know that's the part of it. Like, if we let Nick Petrecki go, Nick Petrecki was drafted at a time when you could water ski down the fucking ice on a forward's back, and it was totally cool. And if the game hadn't changed, Nick Petrecki would have done a hell of a job at that. But the game changed, and we got burned on a first-round pick. It happens. It happens to 30 other teams in the we'll have to 30 other teams in the league starting this year. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say that the Sharks are the best drafting team in the NHL. They're nowhere bloody close, but it's not. You know what? The GM. The problem is the GM gets far too much crap for draft picks when it's really not. The GM just goes up to the podium and says, "Yeah, this is our guy." It's the scouts. Like, there's a scouting problem in San Jose, I think. I don't think that Doug Wilson's not a perfect GM, but I know that when we're in a tailspin, everything hits the fan and, fire everyone, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not even reading the chat right now, so if you're yelling at me, I don't care.
Well, it's a good thing you're not reading it, let me tell you.
Oh, probably is.
Oh, no,
but
I'm kidding.
The reality is that this is a team that has consistently been competitive for the vast majority of its existence. And a lot of that is thanks to Doug Wilson. Now, did we win the cup? No. But you know what? A lot of other good GMs don't win the cup either. Period.
29 every year, actually.
29, yeah. And some of them are pretty good. Some of them are pretty good GMs. There's people like, you look what David Poile done in Nashville. Yeah, there's no cup there, but hard to argue with that team. I mean, yes, they've had troubles this year, but look at the defensemen that franchise has put, developed and put into the NHL. It's obscene. Like, I don't know. I mean, I get it. It's easy to get angry at the draft. But look at draft picks. A lot of draft picks don't work out. I mean, the number of draft picks that don't make it to the NHL are staggering and would surprise a lot of people.
Yeah. And Doug Wilson he's the face, he's the figurehead. This might come as a bit of a shock. He has very little to do with draft selections. What that really comes down to is Burke, his head scouts, his regional scouts, and what will happen is you'll have your list, right, and you'll be figuring out where you're grading players, and the real skill isn't where what round or what tier some of these players are in. It's figuring out where other teams value them as well. And that's the part, with Doug Wilson, and he's got a reputation for a lot of phone calls, a lot of chats. The Sharks will send out a scouting report will come back on a player. They'll send a second scout, get a second pair of eyes, because you want to have verification. All of that gets talked in numerous meetings throughout the year. Burke's there, all the heads are there. Joe Will is there. Right. Wilson's there. So to pin this on Doug Wilson, where it's like Doug Wilson did not pick Kevin LeBanc.
No.
Their OHL scout went to the table, pounded on, and said, Kevin LeBanc is still there. I've got this report, this report, this report. It's been, it's been double checked by these other scouts. This is the guy that we can take here at its value. Doug Wilson isn't going, out to go watch OHL games.
So. And just there's a question in the chat about players that made, but sucked on D. Okay, so again, no one hits the jackpot with every pick, but since Vlasic, the Sharks have sucked on defense in the top runners. It's not even just. It's just well, yeah. But the Sharks suck as picking top picks anyway. Like the Sharks are the problem with the Sharks is they're kind of reverse Edmonton, where they really struggle in the first couple of rounds, and then the last round they pull all these crazy players out. Like I don't know. Here's the but there was a question about percentages of players. So this was from 2000 to 2009. So obviously it's a little bit outdated, but I don't think the numbers have varied very much. In the first round, about 80% of the players taken in the first round will play in the NHL. That doesn't mean they will hit their ceiling. That just means they will play in the NHL. That could be right. That could be, they play a game, they have a cup of coffee, and then they go on to a career as a astrophysicist, or they play fringe hockey between the AHL or NHL, or maybe they're a superstar. The second round, that drops to less than 50% of players playing in the NHL. In the third round, just under 30. In the fourth round, you're lucky if you get 20. And then from the fifth down, it drops from there. So that is the percentage of players. So the fact that the Sharks have had so many late draft picks actually play in the NHL is good. It's just some of their talent acquisitions up top could be, again, and look at, it's so easy to go, oh, well, you took Goldobin and you didn't take Pasternak. Well, yeah, okay, obviously that looks really crappy now, but I don't think there's anything that annoys me more than hindsight goaltending or hindsight drafting.
Right,
it's easy to do.
The Sharks and I've talked a little bit about this on Writer's Room, and I think we all have. The Sharks have a type of player, and they really don't deviate from it. They're looking for character players that there's zero question about their compete level. There's zero questions about their work ethic. They're generally two-way players, and some of them then kind of they're almost always in leadership roles. You look at the number of captains and assists and alternate captains that are on the Sharks roster at any draft pick. They're picking from the leadership core of their teams. Goldobin was a bit of a departure from that. Rudolph Balkers was a departure from that. But more or less, even the kids that they're signing, Tim Clifton coming in, right? Captain material. I've talked to the young man twice. He is about as stand-up character, articulate of a young man that you're ever going to meet in life, period. I wasn't like that at 23. Right. And they're the new goalie that's coming in from Army. I talked to him last night. He's completely polished, 23-year-old, went to Army. You want to talk about, ready for the pro ranks. Discipline will not be a problem. But those are the players that they're selecting. They don't swing for the fences on a Vitaly Abramov. They're not going to take a chance on an Oliver Bjorkstrand and some of these players, in those top three rounds. We can have that discussion. That's a legitimate critique, and that's one that I prescribe to. I would rather swing for the fences on talent that can flame out, as opposed to making sure every draft pick at least will be a fourth line, third or fourth line.
NHL talent.
Nick, I read that same scouting report.
Is that true? They think he'd smile for the camera?
No.
Well, I like Hurdle. I don't. Get off Hurdle's back. I like Hurdle.
I think that Hurdle going back to center, though, he had a nice game here, but it's going to get a bit scary when he is cemented in that center role. I've said it many times on these shows. I feel like Hurdle is a winger. When the going gets tough, the Sharks move him back to the wing, up with the Joes. I just see him. I think they're trying to force him as a center because They have no other options. Tierney is
There's
not
no plan B.
Mindset. No plan B.
There's no plan B. Once Thornton's gone, there's no plan B. It's Couture and Hurdle.
Right.
And
unless they trade.
Unless they trade, which, there's something that I would argue Doug Wilson's a teeny bit better at. Yeah, I mean, Joe, do you have any thoughts on any of the draft talk here? I know we kind of just shut you out for a minute there.
No, you're fine. I want to let you guys go because it was very good discussion. I mean, I didn't really have anything to add just because I think you hit it pretty well on the head, which is, it really is, drafting is such a finicky business. And of course, anyone can Monday mortar quarterback any draft pick and be like, how come we didn't get on Jay Kopitar? How come we traded up for this guy? And, why did we draft, Mueller when there were so many other good defensemen out of that year? And it's really hard to predict how a player is going to, unless, they're an exceptional talent like McDavid or, it's really hard to predict a player's growth and transition from the collegiate, level to the AHL level and then to the NHL level. It is, you can research and you can do as much stuff on paper as you can, but at the end of the day, you're still throwing the dice on 40% of their development. So.
Yep. No, I agree. And but
I think they could throw the dice on 40% of high-end talent as opposed to, smart two-way hockey players with leadership abilities.
Well, the Sharks, admittedly, as we talked about earlier, have a really strong history of drafting late in the game. It's almost like they kind of flipped the script where they honestly seem to have better luck drafting guys like Joe Pavelski and Kevin LeBanc in later rounds or undrafted than picking players up in the first and second rounds. And a lot of that is because the Sharks have a history of trading away their early draft picks. But again, it's really hard to draft somebody based off of leadership when they're 18. I mean, when I was 18, I could barely make a cup of coffee for someone at Starbucks. So to be like, this guy is going to be, a leader going forward. It's really hard to judge how somebody's going to handle and assume the responsibilities of being an NHL player and playing at that high of a level, let alone commanding the locker room. You can again look at. But you can look at the history of guys, leading their own respective teams in the OHL and and the in the college level. But it's really hard to say, can this guy come into the Columbus Blue Jackets locker room or the Chicago Blackhawks locker room and be a voice for the other players? I feel like that's asking a lot out of a player at that age, and that's really hard to gauge because at the end of the day, Joe Pavelski wasn't drafted because they thought he could give good locker room pep talk speeches. He earned that right to give those speeches by playing hard and by earning the respect of the people in the locker room who looked up to him. And that's why the Sharks made him captain, because they thought that he was a model for what the Sharks want in players, guys who come in and produce no matter what the expectation is when they were drafted.
Go ahead.
The pieces are there. It's not like the scouts are just watching games on video and sitting down. When I was up at Portland, I talked to Cody Glass, Joachim Blichfeld. They have Henry Yokoharu, who's going to go in the first two rounds. They have Skylar McKenzie, who's a really intriguing overage player. These kids, when the men in black coats come lurking around, and I got really unlucky when I was in Spokane because there was about 24, 26 of them, they pull them in rooms after games, and for 30 minutes to, I'd say, 75, grill them. There's one NHL team I know that actually brings a test to give draft-eligible players, a paper test, really and truly. They're gauging this. And going back with Pavelski, his leadership potential, and let's be very fair. We're talking potential on all of these young men.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody.
There's no exact science here.
No, you can talk to them. You can when you talk to the captain of a team or somebody that you could you hear about through talking to other scouts and other folks that is part of that leadership core. The way they carry themselves, the way they communicate, it's just different. I can't quantify it. I can't tell you that it's A, B, and C, and if it checks these boxes, they have it. It's just different. there's just people and young men that are there, at all levels. And that's a player that the Sharks generally look for. If it comes down to somebody with maybe some, a Josh Ho-Sang versus a Mirko Mueller type, somebody that's going to slot in, do their job, things like that the Sharks are going to go for that safer pick. And I think that's the part that's frustrating fans is you see teams swinging on, some of these high-end skill players where it's a much more dangerous game.
Right.
Drafting is a dark art already. And as soon as you start sprinkling some real big unknowns, some character issues, game flaws, things like that.
A good example
it
of
gets
this.
Murky.
I mean, a great example of this was, was Josh Ho-Sang. Like, Josh Ho-Sang was a player, despite character issues, that I liked a lot, but I can understand why teams completely steered clear. And now he's up on the Islanders. He's doing pretty good.
Right.
But again, to me, I think the thing it goes back to is that a lot of these players too. I mean, it's not like the Sharks have drafted bad players either, though. Like there's been picks that I didn't like at the time. I mean, to say, okay, they've drafted bad players. Sorry, let's get that out of the way. But
every team has.
Exactly. But there are picks at the time that they didn't see, like, they don't seem bad at the time. Mirko Mueller wasn't a bad pick at the time. He did really freaking good on Everett. Like, he wasn't. I don't think Mirko Mueller was a. I mean, with the benefit of hindsight, it obviously hasn't worked out very well so far. But it's not like Mirko Mueller was this dog crap defenseman playing in some crap. He came up in Everett. Everett has a damn good junior program. It's just. I mean, that's the thing too. It's like sometimes this stuff just happens.
You're projecting 17 and 18-year-old young men trying to figure out how they're going to be as 23, 24, 25-year-old NHLers. Yeah. And it is, part of it's, but there's educated gambles that you can make. And I think the critique that's bugging folks is that the Sharks seem to get lucky in the later picks. Where is that success in the earlier rounds? And in my opinion, from what I see and where I rank players and what the Sharks are doing, they're looking for more certainty in the first 3 rounds. They want guys that they can really pencil in long-term that have good NHL certainty. And then they use the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round on their swings.
Yeah.
That's kind of how, and I'm not in the room. I don't have, I don't have anything outside of kind of what I'm seeing and kind of their list versus my list. And I don't even see their list, but I see the results. Obviously, we all do.
Sure.
Right. And so the Sharks are trying to make sure that the picks they do have at the top are at least base hits. Whereas you look at Garth Snow, he's going for 550-foot home runs every time he steps to that plate. Every single time.
And sometimes they work, and sometimes not so much.
Right. And the Blackhawks, Kyle Beach, the end.
All right. Oh my goodness. Well, you know what? This has been fun. I feel better. Do you guys feel better a little bit, at least, maybe?
Well, I felt distracted for like an hour, and now it's all coming back to me.
Oh no! Sorry.
Yeah.
Zach, do you feel a little bit better about hockey right now?
I live in Northern California. I watch a ton of hockey. My wife puts up with me. I'm stoked every day.
I feel good. Can we talk? Yeah, of course we can talk some Barracuda. Holy crap! What am I doing?
I'm like, sure, we could just cut it off right here. Let's just can it.
No, what am I doing? Barracuda. Barracuda back-to-back wins. We got some new faces on the team. Man, I'm sorry. I completely just look at guys. It's been a night. Let's be honest here. Sorry, I'm streaming the chat now. So the Barracuda they win back-to-back games against the Moose at home. Zach, Tim Clifton. I thought Clifton looked a little more comfortable this weekend. What were your thoughts on? Let's go over the players first, and then we'll get to the games themselves.
Clifton, he's playing kind of that bottom six role. I would, we talked a little bit about his style of play during the draft segment of tonight's show. I'm not seeing thus far, kind of that game-breaking offensive ability. I think in time he can perhaps bring some of that offensive ability. He's playing really limited minutes. The butterflies are out. He's looking better. And It would be, for Clifton, I think, really beneficial to have one of the centers get caught up, because he's a true center. I mean, even with Tucson, he not only had a couple practices fresh out of the NCAA, and he just knew what he was doing there at the center ice. He's a natural center. Worked hard, has a good stick. His skating actually, I thought, was a little bit better than what I had read in some reports. I don't get to watch. Ian and I lament always our NCAA coverage.
Yes, we're bad.
That's
we're
most
bad
of our.
We should feel bad.
Yeah, that's probably 90% of our DMs. Wait, what? That's
What's
terrible, that? Nick. Nothing.
Oh.
Don't read that. He would benefit, I think, getting elevated. If Danny O'Regan were to be called up, I think Tim Clifton is a player that Roy Sommer would have a lot of trust in to not skirt his defensive responsibilities. He plays a very complete game. The butterflies are out, and so I'd like to see kind of Clifton in a elevated role.
What about Nick DeSimone?
So it was his first game. I mean, it was kind of a whirlwind 48 hours for him, and he was supposed to play the first game, but I guess Sommer decided to not do that, and probably about half the games the Barracuda have gone with 7D,
right.
And so it makes kind of introducing a defender a little bit easier. The talk of DeSimone's skating is spot on. Some of his edge work when he's pivoting could use a bit of attention, but overall his skating, I would say, is above average.
Okay.
He didn't get a ton of ice time, and I wasn't able to get my usual sneak peek glance at the AHL TOI sheet, which they don't release for reasons people smarter than me can explain, like Ian. But definitely had the jitters, and that's to be expected. Young man coming into a first place in the league team, trying to make an impression. Lots going off there. What did you think on Clark Saunders?
Clark Saunders. So I caught bits and pieces of this game. Clark Saunders, obviously, looking at some of those goals, obviously rebound control is a huge question mark with him. Again, here's another guy playing his first AHL game, from what I can tell. So I think there was definitely some nerves there. I mean, when they signed this guy, honestly, I just thought it was an extra body for practice. That was kind of my take on the signing when it happened. I'm like, oh, cool. That, another guy to shoot pucks at in practice for the playoff stretch. But I mean, with the way Montes Armalis has played, I was happy to see him get a start and a look. I think that sends a message to Armalis, even if Armalis was the goalie backing him up yesterday. I still think that's a good message that you need to send, because Armalis has been not good lately at all.
Yeah, and you need to be, being able to make contact when you get up and get those opportunities. And Armalis lately, his numbers this entire year have not been anything impressive, but he somehow has put together a winning, pretty substantial. He's 10. I think he's 10-6-2. Yeah,
I was surprised by his win-loss record, because I thought it was worse.
Right. He's been scrappy, in the games he's played, but of late, kind of around the time that the Sharks skid started, truthfully, kind of 2017, his numbers have really taken a dive and the wins have not come.
Right.
So it's getting I think it's full on concern time. I think the Sharks have made their decision on Armalis. I am a betting man, and I would bet that it's not favorable.
No, I don't think he's back next year.
Yeah, because I don't think Troy Grosnick's back. I think he signs for an opportunity with Las Vegas coming in. A lot of teams aren't happy with their backups throughout the NHL. I think that Troy Grosnick's going to go somewhere where he's got a legitimate shot at being a number 2 or a 2A kind of, or a 2B kind of goaltender. I think Armalis goes back to Europe, and I think this is full-on audition time for who your goaltenders are going to be for the San Jose Barracuda next year. Saunders has put up some solid numbers in the ECHL, and now Parker Gahagen is in San Jose. He's going to sign with the Sharks, in the next couple days. He's just completed 4 years with Army and put up really impressive numbers. He's I don't want anyone to get too excited. You look at how Dell and how Martin Jones have graduated from different levels of hockey, and they've quickly acclimated towards their stat line. Even if you're just looking at the stats, they quickly acclimate. That's something that you see in Parker looking over his numbers. I've never seen a game live of him. I've never even seen him practice, but you look at the trajectory going all the way back to Junior A in Canada, and looks pretty good.
I just from the chat, AJ in the chat, Zach, do not discount Dallas' desires for goalies. He could be in Texas next season.
He might be their best goalie in Texas next season.
That's so bad, and that's the thing with Armalis. Like, my takeaway from Armalis this year has been that, he's come in, he's done really good in relief, I find, but there have been games where he started and he just takes them out of it, just immediately just takes them out of the game. And there's just no, and sometimes the Barracuda, bless their hearts, have been able to outscore Armalis' issues. But there's just been, it reminds me of just bad playoff Nabokov, where he could just let in just ridiculously deflating goals that just completely kill anything that's going to come of it. And it's bad. I agree. I don't think Armalis is back next year. But I'm curious to see what happens. I'm also, are you surprised that Jamie Murray hasn't been given a look, or do you think that he's just ECHL to stay for a while?
Was that
you not? That was you.
Oh, I don't know. I think that it's the feeling that I get, and I don't have any information. Nobody has said this to me or confirmed. I just feel like the organization's moving on.
Right,
from Armalis. It's just a feeling. I think it's a little unfair. You look at the extra time that it takes with goalies development at any level. And I think 1 year in North America, that's hard to show anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's I've seen a lot of progress in Armalis in the games I've seen.
For sure.
I wouldn't mind at all him coming back and fighting it out for more ice time. Get a year over here, stay over here this summer.
Right. My question was, though, is are you surprised that Jamie Murray hasn't been called up for a look? From Alan.
Maybe a little bit, since he was already with the organization. But the flip side of it is, if you have a pretty strong feeling that Grosnick's going,
right,
and you were not going to re-sign, excuse me, that's been waiting to come out for a while. Okay, we're good, and we're back. Grosnick's I would say 90% moving on for greater opportunity. I would say Armalis, 15-20% chance he re-signs to duke it out. And if you look at that, you have Jamie Murray at the ECHL level, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing coming out of the pipeline.
No.
You have Sattery, who's played pretty well in the KHL, that I believe the Sharks still hold his. They might hold his right,
according to their media list. They do.
Right, Bergvik over in Division 1 in Sweden has been getting
Division 1 anymore. I thought he was like down.
Well, he's been up in Division 1 and getting lit up. And Mike Robinson can't lock down a backup job in the USHL, so he's back in the NAHL, and his college career continues to be delayed while he develops.
Yeah. Speaking of bad draft picks, what did you think of it? What did you think of the games themselves? Any thoughts on the games themselves?
I thought the Barracuda really did a good job of getting their feet under them. They hadn't played in 6 days before Saturday's game, so getting that first period was rusty, to put it politely, and it showed. And after the game, Sommer even said, Grosnick kept us in that first period. We were just trying to figure out where our legs were. They came back, and it was a solid win. The Barracuda did struggle, I thought, with the talent of Jack Roslovic and Kyle Connor.
Yes.
Especially the speed of Kyle Connor. That was one thing I did notice in the second game. DeSimone had good body position, good stick on Kyle Connor, but he just used his speed and just that AHL knowledge. It's like, no, I could just really, really contest this puck and take it from you, and he did. And I thought that was hopefully a good, quick lesson to the newcomer, that, this is not NCAA hockey anymore. Every puck, these are all guys they've been professional hockey players. So I thought that was a good teachable moment that every player is going to get. I'm not. Again, we're not bashing these guys. We're just trying to offer commentary and insight.
Absolutely.
But luckily, nothing came of it. So, that's good. And what more can you say about Grosnick? He's leading the AHL in shutouts. He's tied for the AHL lead in wins. His save percentage is ridiculous. It's been a huge bounce back year after, he went to the goalie factory up in BC and really worked on his game. It looks nothing like him. He's really worked hard and really deserves a shot. A solid look at an NHL job next year.
That's fair. All right. I had a question in the chat, and then we can call it a night here. Someone asked me, I can't remember who it was, but I remember the question, so I apologize. They said if Edmonton is so good at drafting in the first first rounds, why didn't they make the playoffs? Because they can't draft anything beyond the first round is the problem. If you look at you need star players, and I think the Oilers, well, they drafted good players. They didn't always drafted the players that they actually needed. So they ended up with this awesome center core, this awesome forward core, nothing behind it. Because here's the thing with the Oilers is that when your second to seventh round picks don't work out, then you have no one to backfill your bottom six. You have no depth. So when you have an injury, you're automatically replacing players with, you lose, let's say, a Jordan Eberle. You're replacing him with a fringe guy who's playing in your bottom six, moves up to your top six, and a guy who has no business being out of the AHL comes up to replace that guy. That's what happens when you don't draft well beyond the first round. If you go look on HockeyDB, and if you look at the Oilers draft history and you look at the games played by NHL players after, from the second round, other than Clefbaum, it's a graveyard.
Most of their draft history, actually going back, if I'm trying to do this off the top of my head, really back to either 2010 or 2009. Take a look at that, for Sharks fans. And remember, this is a team that's drafted first overall, 5 times in the last 7 years?
Yep.
Something absurd like that. They've been drafting in the top 10 since time immemorial, since Wayne Gretzky, was in Edmonton, it seems. Take a look at what they're doing. Take a look at the impact players that they have on their lineup right now. from the last 5, 6, 7 years. Sharks fans, I have a feeling, would be running to hug Doug Wilson. You know,
Yeah.
if they took.
I would not be running to hug Doug Wilson if I tanked for 8 years and then traded arguably one of my best players for a subpar defenseman. I mean, okay, Edmonton, yeah,
there's
okay,
nothing else.
No.
Fine, okay, so we'll give you Taylor Hall, right?
Okay, but they had look at what they how many first round draft picks have they had because of the awful seasons they had? Okay, it's now coming into play, but they were awful for like 7 years. If you told me I had to sit through 7 years of the Sharks not making the dance to make it once, no, I don't care. Even if we had Connor McDavid, I don't care.
I think you're missing the point, Joe.
You're
I
missing
think
the point. Yeah.
What I'm saying is that if you look at what outside of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, there's and yes, it was I agree with you that the Taylor Hall trade was questionable at best. There's nothing else that is helping Edmonton from any draft pick.
That's the point. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
the point is when you look at
arguing for that. I'm sorry.
No. I'm just saying when you want to talk about bad drafting, I mean that's bad drafting because the Sharks have really hit on they've hit on a lot of their later round picks and they've become players and look at not all their top round picks are garbage. I mean, whatever. I'm done. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for putting up with our takeover. Obviously, a weirder show, but based on I think with everything that happened tonight, I think it was the right show to do. So I know it was a little more writer's room than after dark. If you're upset by that, I apologize. But appreciate you guys sticking through it with us. And final thoughts. Go ahead, Joe. Where can they find you? Final thoughts.
You can follow me on Twitter at a boy and his team. Keep calm and just know that it looks really bad right now, but better to flesh out all the bad vibes before the playoffs start. I mean, there's really, if we've hit rock bottom, I hope this is it and things can only go up from here. Hopefully, like Jumbo left tonight in his own strength and, Couture's injury, could potentially, it's not a leg injury. It looks more like a head face injury. So it could mean that it's easier for him to draw into the lineup quicker. So just positive thoughts and screw Michael Haley. That's it. That's really it.
Zach, go ahead.
My forthcoming article will be who the Sharks should select with the 23rd overall pick in the 2017 NHL entry draft. It'll really be I think a real good breakdown of Robin Salo versus Jake Ottinger, the goaltender for Boston University. So look for that. Other than that, whatever you do, please don't follow me on Twitter. I bring absolutely nothing to the table. You would definitely not find me at Zach the Bear. That's ZAKKTHEBEAR on the old Twitters. You can read my stuff on thehockeywriters.com, DauberProspects.com, and hockeyprofits.com for all my 2017 draft stuff that is just crazy.
Just remember that we have no blue check marks, therefore nothing we say matters.
That's right.
Not verified. I just followed Zach because I realized I hadn't been following you before.
Don't worry, there's nothing there. I bring no content to the table.
All right. And as you know, I am Ian Reed. You can find me at Ian Blogs Hockey, I believe is what I changed my Twitter handle to. I'm still getting used to it. You can also find my work over on the Evil Empire written, and I hope to have actually something on Pucknology this week. So look for that. Other than that, guys, again, always appreciate your time listening. If you're listening and you enjoy, hit the subscribe button, tell 2 friends, and then they tell 2 friends, and so on, and everyone's happy. Have a good night, gang.
Night, guys.